We speak of love as if it's something we can grasp, define, or put neatly into words, yet the moment we try, it slips through our fingers. It is not a concept that can be fully understood by the intellect, nor something that fits neatly into the boxes we create with language. Love is vast, immeasurable, and deeply personal, yet paradoxically universal. It touches every aspect of our lives, shaping our joys and sorrows, but it remains something we can only truly experience, not explain. Its elusive nature is part of its beauty. You can't pin it down, analyze it, or reduce it to a formula, because the moment you do, you miss its essence. Love operates on a level deeper than logic, existing in a space where words falter and the heart takes over. It's something you feel in the silence between words, in the spaces where the world seems to breathe with you. And it is profound because it calls us beyond ourselves. It invites us into the unknown, where vulnerability meets connection. Love asks us to step out of our comfort zones, to face the fear of being open, and to embrace the uncertainty of giving ourselves to something greater. It has the power to break us apart and then put us back together in ways we never imagined. Love's depth is not in what it gives us or takes away, but in how it transforms us. It holds a mirror to our true selves, revealing our shadows and our light, and challenges us to grow. It is both tender and fierce, gentle and overwhelming, as if the entire universe is whispering and roaring at once. In its elusiveness and profundity, love teaches us that it is not something to be mastered or understood, but something to be lived and felt. It is an experience that defies boundaries, stretching us toward the infinite, while grounding us in the here and now. We often think of love as something we do, an act of kindness, a gesture of care, or a sacrifice for someone else. Or we consider it an emotion, a warm feeling in the heart, a surge of joy, or even a pang of longing. But these are merely expressions, surface ripples of something far deeper. Love itself cannot be reduced to any single action or fleeting emotion, for it exists beyond the realm of doing or feeling. An action can be a manifestation of love, but it is not its essence. You can perform acts of kindness without truly loving, just as you can love deeply without always knowing how to express it. Love doesn't depend on what you do, it simply is. It is the quiet presence that underlies everything, the silent force that moves through life without needing to announce itself. Likewise, emotions come and go, rising and falling like waves on the surface of the ocean. Love, however, is the ocean itself, vast, deep, and unchanging. It is not confined to a particular feeling or mood. You may feel joy, gratitude, or even pain in the context of love. But these emotions are transient. While love endures, it is the steady undercurrent that persists even when emotions shift or actions falter. To see love as more than an action or emotion is to recognize it as a state of being, a way of existing in the world. It is not something you give or take, but something you are. Love is the essence of connection, the invisible thread that binds all things together, regardless of what we do or feel in any given moment. In this way, love transcends our typical understanding. It is not confined to the boundaries of human experience, not limited by the conditions we often place upon it. It doesn't require reciprocity, approval, or validation. Love exists in the quiet stillness beneath the noise, a presence that neither demands nor expects but simply flows. It is not something to grasp or achieve, but something to awaken to, already within us, waiting to be recognized. Love is not something imposed or manufactured. It is as natural as the wind that blows or the rivers that flow. It moves effortlessly, unbidden and unforced, arising not from effort, but from the very essence of life itself. Just as the trees grow toward the sunlight, and the tides ebb and flow with the pull of the moon, love is a fundamental rhythm, a universal force that weaves through existence. It doesn't need a reason or a cause. Love simply happens, like rain falling from the sky or flowers blooming in spring. It is not something we create or control, but something we align with, something we allow to move through us. When we stop resisting, we find that love is already present, guiding and shaping life in its quiet, unseen way. This natural quality of love can be seen in the interconnectedness of all things. The earth provides for the plants provide for the animals, and the animals give back to the earth in an endless cycle of giving and receiving. This is not a calculated exchange, but a spontaneous, harmonious flow, a dance of life, with love as its choreography. Love doesn't need instruction or direction, it knows how to move. It is the force that draws us toward one another, that heals wounds, and that reminds us we are not separate. It is as much a part of life as breathing, not something added to existence, but something intrinsic to it. Even in its quietest forms, love is always in motion. It moves between people in the glance of understanding, the touch of reassurance, the unspoken bond of shared experience. It moves within us as the urge to create, to nurture, to grow. It is life expressing itself in its purest form, reaching out, connecting, and renewing itself endlessly. To see love as a natural movement of life is to understand that it isn't limited to grand gestures or specific moments. It is always present, flowing through every interaction, every being, and every corner of the universe. Like the currents in the ocean or the patterns in the stars, it is simply the way life moves when left to its own unfolding. The idea that we are separate from each other, from the world, or even from the universe itself is one of the most persistent illusions we live under. We are taught to think of ourselves as isolated individuals, bounded by the edges of our skin and defined by the stories we tell about me and mine, but this sense of separation is a trick of perception, a habit of the mind, and love is the force that reveals the deeper truth. In reality, there are no hard boundaries between you and everything else. The air you breathe flows into your lungs, nourishing your body, and then back out into the world, becoming part of the air that others breathe. The food you eat comes from the soil, the sun, and the rain elements that have been part of countless other beings before you. Every cell in your body is composed of the same atoms that once formed stars, mountains, and oceans. Life does not happen in isolation, it happens in connection. This illusion of separation arises because we focus so intently on the distinctions on where one thing ends and another begins that we forget to see the whole. We draw lines around ourselves, labeling some things as self and everything else as other. But these lines are imaginary, like the borders on a map. They exist in our minds, not in the fabric of reality. Love is the experience that dissolves these artificial boundaries. It is the recognition that what we call you and me are not two separate entities but parts of a larger whole. When you love, the sense of I begins to fade, and in its place arises a sense of unity, a feeling that you are not apart from the world but deeply intertwined with it. This is why love feels so expansive. It allows us to transcend the narrow confines of self and step into the vastness of being. It reminds us that the divisions we cling to are illusions and that, at our core, we are connected to everything and everyone. The river does not stop being part of the ocean, and the leaves on a tree do not cease to belong to the forest. In the same way, we do not exist apart from the flow of life, we are the flow of life. When we see through the illusion of separation, we understand that love is not something we give or receive. It is simply the recognition of what has always been the interconnectedness of all things, the truth that we are not alone, and that there is no other in the way we once believed. In love, we come home to this understanding, realizing that we were never separate to begin with. Love, in its truest form, is not something that can be owned, controlled, or confined. It is not a cage we build around another person, nor a set of conditions that must be met to keep it alive. Love is free by nature, like the wind that moves across the open plains or the sunlight that touches everything without discrimination. It resists any attempt to bind it because its essence lies in freedom and openness. When love is possessive, it ceases to be love and becomes something else: fear, insecurity, or the desire to control. Possession comes from the belief that love is a scarce resource, something that can be hoarded or lost. But love is not a commodity. It is not diminished by being shared, nor does it disappear when it flows freely. In fact, the more freely it moves, the more abundant it becomes. To love someone is not to hold them tightly, demanding that they remain as they are or stay close to you. It is to honor their freedom, to recognize that they are not yours to own or define. Love does not ask for guarantees or permanence. It exists in the present moment, thriving in the space where both people are free to be themselves, unencumbered by expectations or demands. This freedom does not mean indifference or lack of commitment. On the contrary, it means loving without attachment to outcomes, without the need to control how love unfolds. It is a deep trust in the natural flow of life, an understanding that love is most alive when it is allowed to move and change. Like a bird in flight, it cannot soar if it is held captive. In its freedom, love teaches us to let go, not in the sense of losing or abandoning, but in the sense of releasing our grip on how we think things should be. It asks us to step out of the confines of our ego, to embrace the uncertainty of life, and to see the beauty in the transient and the fleeting. Love, when it is free, is also generous. It does not measure or calculate, does not keep score of what has been given or received. It gives because it is its nature to give, just as a river flows or a flower blooms. It does not ask for anything in return, because it knows that love, by its very nature, is already enough. To love freely is to accept that love is not a possession but a shared experience, a connection that exists in the space between two people rather than within one person's control. It is a celebration of life's unpredictability, and a reminder that the most beautiful things in life cannot be contained or owned, they must simply be experienced. Love, in its deepest form, is rooted in acceptance and surrender. It is not about forcing things to be as we want them, or trying to mold reality into a shape that feels comfortable for us. True love is an act of radical acceptance, a recognition that things are as they are, and that there is peace in allowing them to be. This doesn't mean passive resignation or indifference. It means embracing the present moment, without trying to change it or resist it, understanding that everything, including ourselves and others, is exactly where it needs to be. When we accept, we let go of the need to control. We stop holding on to rigid expectations or demanding that people conform to our vision of what they should be. Acceptance is the freedom to let others be who they are, without judgment or criticism, without trying to fix them or change them. It is seeing the beauty in imperfection, the wisdom in struggle, and the completeness in the messy, unfinished nature of life. Surrender, in this context, is not about giving up or losing oneself. It's about surrendering to the flow of life, to the unpredictable dance of the universe. It's trusting that life has a rhythm of its own, one that we can't always predict or control, but one that we can choose to move with. Surrendering means stepping out of the need to fight against what is, and instead choosing to trust in the unfolding. It's allowing yourself to be led, not by fear or anxiety, but by the deep trust that love, in its true form, is always guiding you home. In relationships, surrender is the release of the ego's demand for validation, approval, or certainty. It is allowing love to flow freely between you and another person, not trying to hold on too tightly, not attaching strings to what you give or receive. Surrender in love means opening up completely to the other person, letting them in, without protecting yourself behind walls or shields. It is being vulnerable but not weak, because in surrender there is great strength. To surrender is also to accept that we cannot always understand or control everything. There are moments in life that are beyond our comprehension, and there are times when love doesn't look the way we thought it would. Yet, even in the face of uncertainty or pain, love asks us to trust that there is a greater purpose at work, one that we may not always see, but can feel in our hearts. Acceptance and surrender are not passive acts, they are active choices. They are the conscious decision to stop fighting against life and to embrace it in its entirety: joys and sorrows, certainty and doubt, beginnings and endings. In this surrender we find the deepest form of love, the kind that asks for nothing in return and is free from expectation. It is love that simply is unfolding naturally without resistance, because it knows that it doesn't need to change anything to be perfect. At the heart of true love lies the recognition that duality, the separation between self and other, this and that, you and me, is an illusion. In the surface world of opposites, we define ourselves in terms of distinctions male and female, light and dark, good and bad, joy and sorrow. But love transcends these boundaries and invites us to experience the profound unity that lies beneath the surface. It calls us to recognize that what we perceive as separate is, in essence, part of a greater whole. In love, the sense of I and you begins to dissolve. You no longer see another person as someone who is separate from you, someone to be loved in a transactional way or as an object of desire. Instead, you begin to see them as a mirror, reflecting your own truth, your own beauty. This is not the merging of identities in a loss of individuality, but the awakening to the deep interconnectedness that exists between all beings. When love transcends duality, it no longer defines itself by the opposites. It's not about finding the perfect match to complete you or loving someone because they fulfill your needs. Love is a state of being, a profound realization that we are all expressions of the same fundamental reality. In this state, there is no boundary between self and other, no separation between subject and object. There is just the flowing, interconnected dance of life. This union beyond duality is not something you attain or achieve, it's something you come to recognize. It's the realization that the lines you've drawn between you and the world, between one person and another, are arbitrary. They are mental constructs that help us navigate the world, but they don't reflect the deeper truth. The truth is that all things are inextricably linked, and love is the force that reveals this interconnectedness. To experience this union is to experience the world in a new way without judgment, without division. You no longer see someone as another to be judged or controlled, but as a fellow traveler on the same journey, a reflection of your own being. The boundaries that once seemed so real, the walls between individuals, between identities, between nations, begin to melt away in the face of love's vast, unifying embrace. In love, you are both the wave and the ocean, both the sky and the clouds, both the singer and the song. The illusion of separation is revealed as just that, an illusion. In its place, you discover that all things are one, and love is the force that unites everything. It is not a merging of identities, but an awakening to the reality that there has never been any true separation to begin with. It is the recognition that the self is not a solitary entity, but an expression of the whole. And in loving another, you are loving yourself and vice versa. This is not something you do or force, it is a realization that comes when the ego steps aside, when the mind ceases to cling to the belief in separateness. It is an experience of being in the world without the usual divisions, a profound awareness of the unity that has always been there, just beneath the surface of perception. When this happens, love flows freely, without hesitation or limitation, because it no longer sees any reason to hold back. It is the natural expression of a world where duality has been transcended and everything is one. Love is not something that we have to seek out or earn. It is not a rare commodity that comes and goes depending on circumstances or external validation. Love is an inherent quality woven into the very fabric of existence. It is not something added to life, it is life itself, expressing itself through every atom, every breath, every moment. To recognize love as inherent is to understand that it is not a force that arrives or departs, but a constant presence that surrounds us and flows through us at all times. When we stop searching for love, when we stop thinking of it as something outside of ourselves, we begin to see that love is always there. It is not something we need to grasp or chase, it is simply waiting to be acknowledged. It's the air we breathe, the force that binds us to one another, and the energy that sustains all living things. Love doesn't come from others, though it often feels like it does. It arises from the source of life itself, an ever-present stream that we are all part of. This inherent quality of love can be seen in nature, in the way the seasons change, the way flowers bloom, or how the sun rises every day without fail. These processes are not driven by effort or external motivation, but by the natural unfolding of life. Love, too, unfolds naturally. It doesn't require force or manipulation, it simply is, expressing itself through every form and every experience. We often forget that love is a part of who we are. We have been conditioned to look for it outside, to place it in other people or experiences. But love is not external, it is internal. It is the energy behind our actions, the warmth behind our words, the peace that we feel when we stop striving and simply exist. It is the deepest part of our nature, the essence of our being. It is not something that comes and goes, but something that resides within, just waiting for us to tap into it. When we remember that love is inherent, we stop seeing it as something we need to prove to win or to acquire. We begin to experience love as the natural flow of life, a force that moves through us when we allow it without the need for expectation or attachment. Love is not something to possess or hold on to because it is already a part of us. It is something to express, to share, and to embody because it is always with us, like the heartbeat of the universe. This recognition shifts everything. Instead of seeking love, we begin to realize that we already are love. It is not something that can be lost or gained, but something that is always present, waiting to be noticed. The more we allow ourselves to embody this inherent love, the more we see it reflected in the world around us. Love is not an outside force, but an inner awakening to the reality of our interconnectedness and the constant presence of love in every part of existence. In the end, love is not something we must chase or strive for. It is the very essence of life, woven into the fabric of our being and the world around us. It is not defined by actions, emotions, or possessions, but flows naturally as a force beyond duality, connecting all things in a seamless dance. Love is inherent within us, always present, and waiting for us to recognize it. As we let go of our illusions of separation, control, and expectation, we come to see that love is the one constant, the deep current that carries us through life. It is both the simplest and most profound truth that love, in its purest form, is not something we do, it is who we are. And in realizing this, we find that we are never truly separate from the world around us, but a vital part of the love that unites all things.